it's because of the psychology that begins to change, because people get to check things off. And I think that's one of the most critical things when you're getting out of debt and improving your finances, is being able to see consistent and regular progress, even if it's small. Because so many people who live paycheck to paycheck are so used to just constantly getting their teeth kicked in, and they're pushed to the ground all the time with their finances. They're constantly playing defense. Some of these people feel like they haven't had a win in forever. And so just to check off, like, man, I paid off a $100 credit card, you get to cross it off. That feels really good. It's like it's like going on a diet, like you start exercising, you're doing well, you're watching what you eat, and all of a sudden those first few pounds come off, and it's like, this is working. And what do you want to do? You want to keep doing more, right? And so I think that's the mentality behind the debt snowball, is seeing that consistent progress.
Aloha and welcome to another show, guys. Today we have a very special guest, Brad Nelson, founder of Debt Free Dad and a host of Debt Free Dad podcast. Now, I know this isn't the usual kind of topic we cover, but I truly believe it's something that can benefit everyone. And let's be honest, no matter what path you're on, financial stress can hold you back. And if you're weighed down by debt or struggling to save, it affects your energy, your mindset, and your ability to focus on the bigger picture. That's why I wanted to have this conversation today. Brad has helped countless people take back control of their money, get out of debt, and finally experience financial freedom. After struggling with debt himself, he turned his own journey into a mission to help others break free from paycheck to paycheck cycle and to create real financial security. If you ever felt overwhelmed by debt or unsure how to start saving, this episode is for you. Brad is going to share actionable steps to help you make smarter money decisions, ditch debt for good, and build an emergency fund that actually works. I also want to mention that in the very beginning of my podcast recording, I talked about different financial strategies, and I'll link those episodes in the show notes because I personally think being financially secure is very important in life. This was recorded early on in my podcast career. The audio quality may not be the best, and as embarrassing as it may be, I believe the information is definitely valuable. So before we dive in, guys, don't forget to follow, share, and subscribe to the show. If you found value in today's conversation, please leave me a positive review. It really helps us to reach more people. Now, without further ado, let's welcome Brad to the show. Well, aloha, Brad, and welcome to the show. It's great to have you here. I believe one of the biggest financial struggles people face today isn't just making money, but figuring out how to manage it wisely. Debt can feel like a never-ending cycle, and saving money can often take a backseat, especially when you're trying to keep up with the bills. So sometimes having an emergency fund is crucial to staying financially secure, especially with the cost of living rising so fast. So how can we balance paying off debt while still saving for the unexpected?
Yeah, I mean, I think even before you get to saving, so to speak, I think for most people, I think it really kind of comes down to developing an overall plan for your income, plan for your spending. And, after helping thousands of people over the years and doing our podcast, the Debt Free Dad podcast, now we're on our fifth year of doing that show as well. And what we have found is that, and I know from firsthand experience, because I used to live this same way, is that I wanted to save, I wanted to get out of debt, but my spending, my overall management of my finances was an absolute mess. I had no real direction. I had these loose goals of I wanted to save, I wanted to get out of debt, but no like clear plan or path on how to do it. So I think for most people, even before you get to I want to save, first, let's prioritize your expenses and your spending around the life that you want to live. Let's do that. And I think
Yeah.
all too often in this day and age, especially with social media and just how much access we have to everybody's life, everyone's showing things off. It's sometimes our spending habits and our behaviors can begin to become like this herd mentality of they look like what everybody else is doing. But is that really the life that you want to live, or is that just because of what everybody else is doing? So for me, in my journey of getting out of debt, it was almost like a learning process of figuring out what it is that I wanted. And as soon as I was able to start figuring that out, and it didn't happen overnight, it was amazing how much spending didn't need to happen or how many things just didn't interest me as much as they did. Now I'm human just as much as the next person. I still deal with, fear of missing out. And, right now it's spring break. Our family is doing a staycation at home during spring break for us because we went on a Christmas vacation. But I'm feeling FOMO because I live in Wisconsin and it's cold here still. Today it's a little warmer, but it's cold. It's snowing. Some days it's nice. It's like I want to get out of here and experience some warmth, right? So I feel that too, but at the same time, it's very short lived now because I know that we've got financial goals that are working. They're allowing us to save. They're allowing us to stay out of debt. They're allowing us to pay cash for purchases that we want. So I think it first starts there. And then once you have that spending plan, so to speak, of what you want your life to look like, then you can see, okay, based on how much I have left, how much am I able to save? Now, if you don't have much to save, then you know that the life that you want to live is costing you a savings. And then you got to decide what's more important. Is it more important to spend today and have nothing for tomorrow and continue to rely on debt? Or should I cut back temporarily to build up my emergency fund, build that up quick, and then I can add some things back into my life? But again, remember, it's just temporary. But I think it all comes down to really kind of getting a really good plan together, managing your finances, understanding where you're spending your money. And then I think it kind of builds off of that.
Yeah. I'm sorry, we kind of skipped over. I wanted to have you introduce yourself and a little bit about your journey with our listeners. I know you have a podcast as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Brad Nelson. I run a company called Debt Free Dad. I've been doing this 10 years now and never had any plans of getting on a podcast with an individual like you and for your audience of teaching people about money and personal finance. But I too, at one time, struggled with a lot of terrible spending habits, paycheck to paycheck living, had a lot of credit card debt, made a lot of terrible choices with cars and car payments and was living just this cycle of crisis to crisis living. And eventually, as I got to my early 30s, I didn't want to live like that anymore. I did pretty well in my job. Not, I mean, average. I wouldn't say well, but for what I was doing for a living, I made some pretty good money. But at the end of the day, I had nothing to show for it. And I was getting raises, I was getting bonuses, I was getting things, and it's like, where is all this money going? And it seemed like every time something turned around or there was like another emergency, it's like all we were doing is constantly swiping a credit card, you know. And so I just really started to learn about personal finance and really went on this journey of really just letting my ego go about what I thought money should be, and just trying to figure out what were successful people doing with money, what were they doing, and come to find out, it really wasn't anything that fancy. It was living below your means, having a budget, having a good financial plan, not only just, for right now, but also what do the next 5 to 10 years look like? And for me back then, man, that was like, oh my gosh, 5 to 10 years. How can I even think that far ahead? I'm trying to figure out how I can afford tomorrow. Right. So it was something that, I built over time, and, I've been debt free now for, and what is this, 12 plus years now,
Wow.
outside of my mortgage. And I have two kids, and yeah, but I mean, people today, and I think what separates us from most people out there is like we're still pretty normal guy. Like I live in a normal house, I drive normal cars. I don't live in some mini mansion and live this exotic life. It's I've just done some pretty simple things that most people have the ability to do, and if you're willing to do them and you're willing to work hard at them and be consistent with it, over time, I believe most people, especially middle income earners or middle to higher income earners, man, the sky's the limit. You can really live a pretty fantastic financial life if you're willing to put in the work and sacrifice a bit.
Yeah, that sounds great. So, when someone is struggling financially, What should they prioritize first? Would it be paying off debt or building an emergency fund, or should they do a little bit of both?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, you're never going to get out of debt if you're constantly relying on it. So I think building an emergency fund or some sort of a savings account is priority number one. And my recommendation, people always ask, well, how much is that, Brad? I recommend at least $1,000 to $3,000. If you can get it to $3,000, fantastic. Now, if you want to do more, because I have some people who are like, I would feel more comfortable at five, then okay, let's get it to five grand. But for most people, that $1,000 to $3,000 is a good level. Now, people might say, well, that's not really a lot of money. And you're right, it's not. But it's not always the big things that throw us off, right? It's all of the little things that add up over time. And I know for me, it was always like $100 emergency there. Or if I forgot about that bill, now I got to swipe again, and you're swiping again, you're swiping again. It's like death by 1,000 cuts. All of a sudden, you turn around and you're looking at this mountain of debt, and you're wondering what in the heck is all of that. And for me, and for a lot of people out there, it was just a lot of these. Oh, I forgot, or oops, or yeah, it was some emotional spending. I shouldn't have probably did it, but I did it anyways, right? So I think when you have an emergency fund savings, it really changes the psychological thinking of I don't have to rely on debt because I saved and prepared for this. So when an emergency comes up, I'm going to use cash rather than going into debt and swiping the card. So it breaks the constant habit of looking at debt as an emergency backup plan. You are the emergency backup plan. We just have to become better at creating a habit of saving and planning for those unexpected expenses that are coming down, the line. I mean, long-term wise, big picture, ideally, you'd want to at least build at some point a 3 to 6 month emergency fund. There are some people out there, depending on your situation, you may even want to consider doing a 12-month emergency fund. And how you would calculate that is just saying, okay, if I was to lose my income today and I needed just the basic amount of money to cover my basic necessities, what's that number every month? And then multiply that however many months you need. And that's your savings number. And that way, if a big thing comes up, you get sick or, whatever might happen, job loss, you've got something to fall back on. But that takes time to build. And I highly recommend once you start paying down debt, it becomes much easier to build it because you got more money to throw at a savings account like that because you're getting further out of debt.
True. Is all debt bad debt, or are there any situations where taking on debt can be beneficial?
Yeah, I love the good debt, bad debt because I've been in a situation, especially back in 2010 and 2011. My first marriage ended in divorce, and I bought a house that I couldn't afford. Neither one of us could afford it on our own. So we ended up having to go through a foreclosure process with that home because at that time, the housing market, the homes weren't worth as much as you owed on them back then because the housing market was going down. And so at that time, people might say, like even today, people might say, well, mortgage is a good debt. I can tell you, it's not a good debt when you can't pay it. I don't care how much you call it a good debt. If you can't pay it, it's not good anymore. It's not fun. So on the Debt Free Dad podcast, it's funny you bring this up, Mia, because we just had this conversation. And what we like to call it is instead of good debt, bad debt is what is tolerable debt? What's tolerable? And so I think when it comes to houses, mortgages, I think that's a tolerable debt. I think if you're going to open a business, I think that could be a tolerable debt because that business is going to eventually and hopefully soon create an income, right? I think where you have to be careful though is when you're getting into homes or you're getting into a business or anything like that is you have to be aware of the risks and go into it with a good plan. Like right now, there's too many people who are buying homes that have no money in their savings account. And when I'm working with people, it's not the mortgage that typically is causing the problems. It's all of the other things that come across or come with the house. It's the upkeep and the maintenance, and all of a sudden we have the roof is leaking and we have no money to fix it. And what happens if you have no money going into it? What are you doing? You're going further and further and further into debt for something that is supposed to be a really good asset for you to build wealth. So I think home buying can be a great thing, but I think people just have to go into it with a good plan. And I think if you do, that can be definitely a tolerable debt. I still have a mortgage today, but I can tell you, I learned my lesson from that first house I lost, and I went into the new home purchase many, many years later, with a much better plan because I knew the pain that can come from not having a good one. So yeah, I would say those are a few things. Some people might say, student loans. Is student loans a tolerable debt, or is that a good debt or a bad debt? All depends. All depends. I think you have to, as parents and as students, we need to be doing definitely a much better job educating not only the students but also the parents on what these kids and eventually very young adults are getting themselves into, because many are getting themselves into thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars of debt, and they don't understand the repercussions of what that's going to mean once they become mid to late 20s. And let's say they went for a job that didn't necessarily have a great salary right out of college, and now they've got these huge student loan payments. The repercussions are, people are feeling that. So I think, you know, I think student loan debt, it can be something that could be considered tolerable as long as you're going into it with a good plan. I think there's also a lot of ways you can go to school with very little debt or no debt at all. Do you have to do it a little bit different than most people? Yeah, but it's still possible today for you to do it. It just takes a little time, a lot more planning, and having a strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. I know with my son, he has in his company, they have a work plan for school. Like they pay for the schooling as long as you have a C and above average, they will pay for the schooling.
Oh, it's
So
perfect. Yep.
I
And
know.
there's a lot of places that'll do it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think when it comes to college, and I mean, we could probably have multiple episodes just about this
Mm-hmm.
topic, but I think when it comes to college is that there's a lot of this idea that I need to have the college experience. These
Mm-hmm.
kids feel like they need to have that experience. Well, that experience comes at a very high price.
Yeah.
And I think parents sometimes can get wrapped in that too. My kid's going to this name brand school out there.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is when you ask, and we've asked this on our social media posts and talking about it, most employers, they don't care where you went to school. Now, there some professions out there, and by the way, minimal professions out there that care or where it matters for you. Yes, there is, right? So it doesn't apply to everybody. But for the majority of people out there, they don't care. I used to do hiring. I used to work in the graphic design industry. I worked in the sign industry for 15 years prior to doing this business. And I used to hire my team. And I never looked at where they went to school. Never. It was just never something that we looked at. So you want to think about those things. I understand right now as kids and even as parents, you might say, like, it's really exciting that they're going to this school, or you say, I'm going to this school and we have this great experience, right? Nobody cares 10 years later, right? But you're still going to be paying on it 10 years later if you're not careful. So you just want to be thoughtful of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And for mortgages, do you suggest maybe people pay off um, paying extra every month to get down the principal?
Yeah, I mean, I think eventually that's a great plan. I mean, I think ideally, it would be great to get to retirement and have a paid for home. What the idea is, and retirement I use loosely. Everyone has a different idea of what retirement looks like, but when you get to a retirement years, though, when you get to your older years, your income becomes more limited, right? You don't have the flexibility of going out and working 2 or 3 jobs. I mean, some of them have to, but you're probably not going to want to, right? So ideally speaking, you want to get to the point of paying down your home by the retirement years or sooner if you can. But where most people really need to spend their focus on is getting their credit cards paid off, because those are at really high interest rates. Getting your student loans paid off. The car payments yeah, are just unbelievable. Right now, the average car payment is $750 a month. $750 a month. 20% now of all loans are now $1,000 per month or more, which is unbelievable. And so, and I know we there's two things that we can post about in our business that we know is going to irritate people more. It's credit scores and cars. If we talk about either of those things, our social media posts just blow up. They go crazy viral. In fact, I've got 3 posts right now that have hundreds of thousands of views and comments, and a lot of them have to do with cars. Like there are people who just love their cars here in the United States, and they'll defend them to the death, right? But the reality is, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, and if you're like a lot of the people that I've helped over the years, car payments are one of the number one things that keeps most people stuck. And it is the top reason that people do not get approved for mortgages is because of high car payments.
Wow, that's
Um,
interesting. So these cars that they're buying, I don't know what they're buying, but it's about, like you said, $700 average, and these are 7 years, isn't it? These are typically 7 years?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I mean, you still have people that are doing, 60 months, 72 months, 84 months. Those are kind of in that range. But I've heard of 9 years even. Now, obviously, that's not as common, but it's out there. And it's not only just the car payments, but it's also if you do have a less than like let's say you don't have a very good credit score. I mean, the interest
Mm.
rates that they're charging on these loans is insane too. So you got to keep that in mind as well. And so
Yeah.
those are going to be the things that I'm going to focus on more say than a home. Again, because for most people when you're buying a home, for most people the mortgage isn't nearly as bad as all of the other things combined. And if you got rid of all of those other things or at least reduce them drastically, it would definitely reduce a lot of the stress on the cash flow and on just on the whole household in general.
Hey, Ohana, I hope you're loving this conversation as much as I am. I just wanted to pause for a quick moment to ask for your support. If you're enjoying what you're hearing and feel like we've earned it, we'd be so grateful if you could leave us a rating or review. Your honest feedback really helps us grow and reach more people who love exploring these fascinating topics. And if you think this episode would resonate with someone you know, don't forget to share it with them. Mahalo nui loa for being part of our journey. Now, back to the show. Wow. Yeah, many people feel overwhelmed by debt. Where's the best place for them to start when trying to pay off their debt? Would it be
Yeah,
the
so
smaller cards? I'm sorry.
yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I love the debt snowball approach. I mean, it's been made popular obviously by, you know, the gurus like Dave Ramsey and all that. And but I love it because the debt snowball and they've studied this like debt avalanche, which is the interest rate method, focus on the higher interest rate, or the snowball method, which is again focusing on the lower balance. They've done studies on these, and multiple studies have come back and proven over and over again that the debt snowball method is the most effective method, and it's because of the psychology that begins to change because people get to check things off. And I think that's one of the most critical things when you're getting out of debt and improving your finances is being able to see consistent and regular progress even if it's small. Because so many people who live paycheck to paycheck are so used to just constantly getting their teeth kicked in and they're pushed to the ground all the time with their finances. They're constantly playing defense. Some of these people feel like they haven't had a win in forever. And so just to check off, like, man, I paid off $100 credit card, you get to cross it off. That feels really good. It's like going on a diet, like you start exercising, you're doing well, you're watching what you eat, and all of a sudden those first few pounds come off and it's like, this is working. And what do you want to do? You want to keep doing more. Right. And so I think that's the mentality behind the debt snowball is seeing that consistent progress. And that's what begins to build more confidence. And the more confidence that you have, the more willing you're willing to take, or you're more willing you are to take action. And so that's how that thing consistently grows. But yeah, debt snowball because smallest to largest. That's how you're going to list your debt, smallest to largest by balance owed, and you just pay them off in that order.
Nice. So, what is the biggest mistakes people make when trying to pay off debt?
I think looking for quick fixes is probably one big one. A lot of people when they're on their own, they might fall for things like debt consolidation or balance transfers or taking out a home
Mm.
equity line of credit to consolidate debt. And I know on the surface, those things can look good and appealing because it is reducing your monthly cash flow because it's reducing your payment to go out. It's reducing your interest, at least initially. And it can feel good because it's like we've done something. Now we have extra money every month. But the reality is people like, and they'll even use this. I actually have some examples that I use in some of my workshops that I do. And marketers will actually sell these products, will say, they'll use words like, you just paid off all of your credit cards using a consolidation loan. Congratulations. But have you really paid anything off? But when you're reading that, it looks like I paid off all my credit cards. No, all you've done was move from the name credit card over to consolidation loan. You still have the debt, but it can feel like progress, but it's false progress. So it can make it feel like you're doing something, but you're actually not. And then the reality is where a lot of people get bit by this is not by the consolidation loan, but it's by them and their behaviors and their habits that didn't really change that got them into that debt to begin with. So what tends to happen is they do a consolidation loan, they do a balance transfer, those cards become clean or whatever they cleaned up. Now all of a sudden it's a few months later, things have been good, and guess what? Ooh, those habits come back and you start swiping those cleared off cards again. And before you know it, you have the original consolidation loan. And now you're adding balances to those old cards again because they were options, right? And I feel like that's an area where people really need to understand is like there are no elevators out of debt. There are no quick fixes. There's no get out of debt overnight. You didn't get into debt overnight. It's going to take you longer than overnight to get out. So you really first want to focus on you, like the behaviors, the habits, the choices, the things that you have done to get you to where you are, and what can you do to begin changing those things? Because once you do that, everything now begins to change. Now, I might sound like a little bit of a hypocrite. It's not to say that debt consolidation and balance transfers can't work. They can. They can be a tool. But first, you have to address the real issue. And for most people, not everybody, but for most people, it is the money mindset. It is the behaviors, the habits, and choices that are causing the issue. Focus on that first, and then you can see how some of those types of tools can fit in later once you're addressing those things.
Wow. How can someone with an irregular income effectively build and maintain an emergency fund?
So a regular income is interesting. I love this one, and I think it's not that I think everyone should have a budget. I think everyone should have a plan. But people who make a regular income, man, I'm going to pick on you guys. I'm one of them because I run my own business too. You guys need a budget and a plan more than anybody because your income is up and down all the time, right? So I think you're going to build it the same as anybody else would. I would say what a lot of people struggle with their regular income is how do I plan for my money and my expenses because I don't even know how much money I'm going to make each month. So my first piece of advice or suggestion would be to figure out an average. If you go back and you look at how much, let's say the last year, I like a year because you have the seasonality of your income. Most careers have some sort of, peaks and valleys in their year. So get an average throughout the year. And then, base that average on the time of the year. Like, if it's really slow in the month of January, you may not want to use the average of the entire year, bump it down a little bit, right? And then as the income comes in throughout the month, you can adjust the income and your spending based on the money that's coming in. And then again, that budget is really going to be the determination of how much money you're going to be able to put into your emergency fund. Now, I do have one cool trick that fixes all of this. It takes time, but I like to practice what I like to call is the month behind system. So what I do, like for my business, and if you make a regular income, it'll work for you too, is let's say like we're in the month, as we're recording this, we're in the month of March. All right. So right now, everything that I've made in my business from March 1st all the way through March 31st, I don't touch it. I leave it in there. And at the very last part of the month, I close my month. I figure out what were our expenses in the business. What is everything I'm keeping in the business as far as, money for future investing or whatever we're going to do in the business. And then how much am I going to pay myself because I work for a living, right? I want to make a living too. And being that the money's there, I can say on April 1st, I'm going to pay myself X amount of dollars. So that way, when I do my April budget, I know exactly how much money I have to use because it's already there. So I always just work 1 month behind. So the money I use to build, like to budget in April, is the money I made in March. And again, the reason I do it this way is because it takes all the guessing out of your finances because it's a known number now, right? Now, the hard part for most people is how do I start it? Because I need the money I'm making in March right now. I can't wait a month, Brad. So what I typically find is the best time is this time of year is tax time where you're getting maybe a return of some sort. Or if you get like, again, a bonus, or maybe you have a really good month of your regular income, start putting a little extra money in this fund that you could live on essentially for a month to get this thing going. I've worked with so many small business owners, especially like gig workers, direct sales people. Like I've worked with a lot of those types of people, and the people that can get this system going, it takes like so much stress off of managing their business finances and their personal finances. It just takes a little time and planning to get it there.
That's interesting. I never heard that before. What did you call that? The
I call it the month behind system.
month behind system.
Yep.
Okay.
Because again, you're using the previous month's income to budget for the current month you're in.
That's that's incredible. Okay. How do you address and I guess how do you address the challenge of unexpected expenses that deplete our emergency funds?
Well, I mean, you're gonna, and that happens because again, if you're gonna if you're starting with $1,000 to $3,000, especially in this day and age, doesn't take much to spend that amount of money, right? That's why I suggest push to that three. If we can get to that three, all the better. But essentially, what you would do is if for some reason you had an emergency that depleted all of that money, you would go back. So you, because at that point, once you have your emergency fund built, like you're using the debt snowball, you're attacking your debt, you're paying it down, you're paying it down, you're paying it down. Anything extra, you're throwing at your debt. Well, if you have to use your emergency fund and deplete all of that, you would go back to just making minimum payments on everything. And then you would put your main focus again on step number one of rebuilding your emergency fund. So it's kind of like a seesaw game. Obviously, the idea hopefully is that we don't have to go too far to rebuilding our emergency fund over and over again. But I mean, I've had members that have had to do it 6 or 7 times. But the beautiful thing is they're not going into debt to cover those things. They're not making their situation worse, right? So and eventually they do get out. Other members get a little bit lucky. They don't have to rebuild it only but a few times, but it just kind of depends on your particular situation. As someone who has, several kids, I have 2 kids myself. My partner has 3. Like, we're used to emergencies around here. it's just constant, right?
So this emergency fund should be about, you said, $1,000 to $3,000.
That's what we take. Again, that's what we typically would recommend for the average person. And again, everyone's situation is different. So if you're someone who, feels like, your situation is a little bit more unpredictable, maybe you are someone who has a regular income, like we just talked about, you'd like to have a little bit more money in savings just in case. In that sense, it might make sense to build it a little bit bigger. But Mia, the goal is to get people to get paid off their debt as fast as possible. Like we don't want you staying in debt. We don't want you strolling your way through this. We want you to get really intense, really focused, and get it paid off as fast as possible. Because when you're in debt, you are being penalized, and it's called interest, right? You're being penalized, and they're making money off of you not having a plan, right? And we want to get you to the point where interest can be the benefit, which is when you get to invest, which is when you get to put money in the market and actually begin to plan your future, or put it into a business that you're going to open that's going to create income, right? But until you can loosen up that cash flow, none of that can happen. So, we really want to make a good plan of like, we want to get this done and have the mentality of urgency. What can we do right now to get this done? Short-term sacrifices, let's work hard. And then we get to live the rest of our life with very little debt or no debt at all and be able to have a lot of different opportunities.
So should people do a little bit of both? I know we should remove the debt, but should they put a little on the side as well, or should they just focus on debt first and then the emergency fund?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is more of like it's kind of a choose your own adventure. I would say we have some people that will do that. They feel comfortable. They like the idea of, I want to put 50 to $100 in my emergency fund every month along with paying down debt. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I mean, those are great things. I would much rather you do that than say spend an extra $100 going out to eat and not wondering where your money's going, right? So there's definitely nothing wrong with that. Same thing with where we'll have people ask questions of, should I continue to invest while, say, building my emergency fund or paying down debt, or I get a match at my employer because they match a little bit of money. Every situation is different. In some cases, it makes sense to keep doing that. And in others, it might make sense to pause that and say, I need to heavily focus on getting my foundation built. And once that's done, then I can consider turning that back on a little bit. But when it comes to investing and those sorts of things, like if you're in a situation where you have like a lot of credit card debt, like you think about the interest you're paying on that credit card debt that's revolving every single month. And then if you get to pay that back and pay that off, all of that interest that you were paying is now money back in your pocket. That's guaranteed money back in your pocket you're no longer paying. there's no guarantee you'll ever get a guarantee in the stock market. It's not going to come, right? They'll give you based on average returns, this is what you can expect to get. But if you have a credit card that's got 29% interest and you're paying 29% interest on revolving debt every single month, I'm getting that 29% back in my pocket every single month as soon as that thing gets down to zero, right? So that's the way you want to be looking at get out of especially high interest debt before you start considering like major investing and things.
Makes sense. Can you share any success stories where someone's life changed after getting out of debt and started to build their savings?
I mean, I hate I hate to pat us on the back. We have so many. I'm gonna pick on Paige though, because I just literally interviewed her on my podcast right before I jumped on with you. And Paige Schneider is a single lady, and she started working with me 18 months ago. And she had mentioned she's like I tried everything. I tried working extra hours. I tried cutting out expenses. I tried budgeting a little bit, but she's like nothing ever seemed to work. I always would just kind of slip back to my old ways, and it wouldn't seem like no matter how much money I would make, there was just never enough to do what I wanted to do. So she ended up joining our membership site Roots, and I started working with her, and she started coming to our group coaching calls that we do, and she started working the plan. And admittedly, she says in the first 90 days it was tough. And we even had a coaching call, one-on-one call with her, and she's like, I don't know if I can do this. And I said, Paige, you got to understand, just like we just talked about, you didn't get here overnight. You got to give this some time to work. There's no quick fixes. Just keep putting in the work, and eventually that negative momentum that you're now feeling will turn to positive. But it's got to start with one little step at a time. And in her first 9 months, she paid off thousands of dollars. And I had her on our podcast. This is about a year ago. And she's like, I can't believe this. She's like, I'm so excited. Like, this is incredible. Like, I feel so much different, so much better. I have less stress. But she also knew, she's like, I got a long way to go, and there's still some things that I need to fix. So I brought her back because now she's near up to $25,000 paid off again on a single income in the last 18 to 20 months. And she says, like, she actually said, she's like, my mom and my grandma said I was crazy for wanting to do this. They were like, you're going to waste your money. It's not going to work. And she's like, now they've come back to me and apologized, and they can't believe the difference that it's made in my life. And she's like, it's been unbelievable what she's been able to do. And even still, she says, there's still some things that I need to figure out and I need to work on because it is a journey. It's not something that, your path is not going to be linear. It's going to have some ups and downs, and even she's experienced those things. But it was just great to talk to her, because talking to her 90 days in and seeing where she is today, like, she just looks completely different. Her voice sounds different. She's excited. She's hopeful. Like she's loving it. And I mean,
That's awesome.
How cool is that? And
yeah. You said $25,000 she did in how long?
In 18 to 20 months.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That really is. What is the average time that it takes to bring down a debt, something kind of big like that?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, man, I've had members pay off 80 grand in 12 months. People who thought
Wow.
I was never gonna be able to get there. We have people from all different walks of life. We have some, pretty high income earners that'll come through that are making some really great money. But just because they're making great money doesn't mean they know how to manage it well either, right? So they have may have a nice wrapper, right? They have a much nicer outside wrapper, looks good, but on deep inside, it's about the same as everybody else, right? But we've had those people pay off hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. But then, I have, again, like single people that'll come through, and they're on different, they all have different resources and means of what they're able to do. And some people, within 6 months are paying off $5 grand. It just kind of depends on everyone's particular situation. And it also depends on what people are willing to do. Like a single person has unlimited time. They can work probably as many hours as they want. They have no one depending on them. They don't have any kids. Like, their ability to go out and make money is virtually endless outside of needing sleep, right? Whereas opposed to if you talk to a single person who's got kids, different situation, right? But that does not mean it's impossible. It just means that you have to look at things based on your situation and what you're willing to do. And if you're willing to do that and get outside and think outside the box, man, the options are limitless, especially in this day and age, with phones and internet. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can now make money just from home, and honestly, really good ways of doing it too. And so the options are out there. So I get everyone's situation is different. So it's hard to put a number on what's the average. just because everyone's in a different place when they get started.
Okay, I see. And you offer classes on this?
Yeah. So how we work is we typically recommend people go through our free workshops that we have. So we have a budgeting workshop. It's absolutely free. Um, we give you a budget. We show you how to do it, how to get your first one done. What are the steps to getting it successfully done? That's free. You can go on our website. It's right on our website. We also have a workshop called Life Without Payments, and that's more of a general overview of like, hey, Brad, I'm ready to get out of debt. Like, I'm tired of living this way. I just don't know the steps. Like, show me what I need to do. And that workshop will walk you through step by step the things that you need to do, the things that you need to focus on. And in that Life Without Payments workshop, we actually give you the debt snowball worksheet with all the directions and everything to get everything started. So we give you a lot of great free resources to get started. But where a lot of people are missing in their journey of getting out of debt isn't that they don't know what to do, because the information's out there. Like it is out there. It's personal finance education is ultimately, a lot of it's free. It's already there. What a lot of people lack is really this ongoing support and accountability to keep doing it. And that's where we offer our accountability and our accountability and support system called Roots. And so inside Roots, not only do we give them 9 modules full of education on everything personal finance related, but we also give them group coaching calls. We give them access to our Debt Free Dad app, which has our community in it of hundreds of other members. We do monthly challenges with our members to look at their spending, like no spend challenges and gratitude challenges, and really producing and helping them fine tune a more positive money mindset. And then we like to give out prizes and have fun, and it's just a great group of people. And it's cool because, again, in this day, especially in today's society, a lot of people do live paycheck to paycheck, and not that everyone wants to do that, but there are somebody who are okay. There are some people who are okay with that. Spend, spend, spend. We are a consumer society. So sometimes it's easy to get sucked into that mentality, right? Because it's always surrounding us. And when you have a community of people who are like, we want different, it's pretty cool to be able to come there, be able to celebrate, be able to ask questions, get support when you need it, especially when times are going tough. And that's what people come back to and say is that it makes the biggest difference is it's not just what you've taught us, but it's all these other people who are doing this that have really encouraged me to keep going and showing me what's actually possible.
Wow. Well, this has been an insightful conversation offering practical strategies for managing debt and building financial security. But before we wrap up, Brad, could you tell our listeners a little bit about your podcast, The Debt Free Dad, and where they can tune in? And also, what's the best way for them to connect to you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. Which I greatly appreciate it. So yeah, I mean, if you love today's conversation and you want to learn more, I would highly recommend at least getting started with the podcast. We are right now are currently releasing 2 new episodes every single week. And those episodes go through all of the basics of personal finance, and it's geared to those people who are living paycheck to paycheck and they just want to live a different life. We are on our 5th year. We have, I think right now, I think we're at like 330 total episodes that we've released. I can't believe it's been that long. But the other cool part about our podcast, though, is that we have 5 hosts on it, which people might say, like, that's a lot. Well, we have people from all different walks of life. Like, I have Katie on, who's a single person, because a lot of people say, well, I'm single. It's impossible for me to get out of debt. Well, Katie started her journey making $13 an hour. And in 6 years, she's paid off nearly $200,000. And so
Wow.
she's doing it on her own. And so she's on there to share her perspective, because my perspective in a household where I'm sharing expenses with somebody is way different, right? Or I have Chris, who's now retired. He used to be a finance high school teacher, and he taught kids how to be debt free, how to live debt free. And now he owns, because he retired, he decided to open up his own ice cream shop as a retirement plan. And that's what he does. But now he gets to share his perspective of, I'm retired. I've been doing this for years. Here's how it's affected me. I have my brother on, who was the biggest doubter of all of this. Like, you'll never get out of debt, Brad. You're crazy for wanting to do this. He saw me do it, and he's like, now I'm going to do it. And now he's been debt free, and now he works for our company and helping us grow it. So it's crazy. And then we have Amber, who's from Canada, completely different country. They deal with a lot of the same types of issues too. And so it's just a really cool dynamic of having all these people in there having their perspectives, because again, not one idea is the right idea. It's all these people talking together and just sharing like what's worked for them, because a lot of us are dealing with a lot of the same types of stress, but we're all dealing with it in a little bit of a different way. So it's just a cool way to kind of learn more about money and our perspective. And again, the cool part is we're all normal people. None of us are fancy. None of us are major influencers in that way. just normal people doing normal stuff. So it's really cool. And then if you want to go to our website, debtfreedad.com, that's where you can get access to all of our workshops to get started with. We got a bunch of free guides on there. We've got our weekly newsletter that goes out every single Sunday if you're interested in reading some of that stuff. So, I mean, we got so much stuff you can get started with. I think the key is just get started. Just get started somewhere with something. And the little steps that you'll take, you'll be thankful you do in a year from now when you look back and see how far you've come.
That's amazing. And I love it. I love it. So, Brad, thank you again so much for joining us today. This has been an incredible conversation. And I know my listeners will walk away with valuable insights and something that they can apply right now. So I appreciate your time and your knowledge and everything that you shared with us. And I'm really looking forward for you to come back in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Brad. And that brings us to an end of another episode. I want to thank my special guest, Brad Nelson, for joining us today and sharing his expertise on getting out of debt and building financial security. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow, share, and subscribe to the show. If you found value in today's conversation, leave a positive review. It really helps us to reach more people and to grow our ohana. Until the next time, guys, stay aware, stay curious, and most importantly, stay financially secure. Until the next time, take care. Ahui ho kako. Bye.
Tingling on the inside, gonna have a good time. Looking at the sunshine, feeling like a